Patterson. Kobe cannot get Patterson in the air. A wild three. Hit it.
James misses the tripping. Kobe trying to lose Harper, and he's hit by Harper. Glasses it home! I don't believe this guy!
Hi, I'm Jay Skapanak. And are you constantly being bombarded on social media by 16-year-olds who know absolutely nothing about any other era in basketball history? Or the mainstream media, who are quite obviously on LeBron James's payroll? What are you even talking about? Well, don't let this happen to you. Instead, sit back, relax, and let's count the reasons why the Black Mamba was a superior scorer to LeBron James. Read it and weep, millennials. Most know-nothings in the media and social media are too ignorant to see past the career scoring averages, as LeBron carries a higher career point per game average than Kobe Bryant and has scored more total career points. An obvious short-sighted argument which lacks all context. I know you millennials understand context to some degree, seeing as how you use it all the time to diminish Bill Russell's 11 rings and Wilt Chamberlain's scoring averages and records. Speaking of Chamberlain, Dirk Nowitzki has more career points than Wilt Chamberlain, and Karl Malone has scored more than Michael Jordan. So let's examine the context of Bryant as a scorer versus LeBron. In their 13 prime seasons, aged 22 to 34, Bryant and LeBron played almost an identical amount of games. In these roughly 1,000 games they played, Kobe has nearly a full point advantage in scoring per game compared to LeBron. But let's take a closer examination of the era that both played in. Perhaps it was easier to score in Kobe Bryant's era. Quite the contrary. From 2000 to 2013, Kobe Bryant averaged 28.1 points per game. During that 13-year span, the nightly NBA scoring average was 97, and nightly possessions per game was 91. Compare that to LeBron's 13-year peak from 2006 to 2019, when average scoring per game was roughly 102 points per game and nightly possessions were around 94. So Kobe scored nearly a full point per game more prime for prime, despite residing in an era where nightly scoring and pace were less. Not only that, but over that span of time, Kobe's aged 22 to 34 seasons, he took only 21% of his field goal attempts at the rim, as compared to a whopping 28% from between 16 feet to the three-point line. Compare that to LeBron James, who took 36% of his shot attempts at the rim and only 18% from 16 feet to the three-point line. So quite simply, LeBron James took easier and much more efficient shots than Kobe Bryant. Now, he shouldn't be criticized for being able to bully players and ram himself under the basket. I mean to exploit matchups and get efficient shot attempts. But Kobe was taking much more difficult and low percentage shots in an era which saw less scoring by and large, and Kobe still scored more than LeBron James. Now, in terms of elite, high-level scoring, it's not even close. Kobe Bryant is third all-time in 40-point games with 122. LeBron is 11th all-time with 66, nearly half of Kobe's. Bryant has 25 career 50-point games, which is third most in NBA history, and LeBron has 12, again, nearly half as many, which is 8th all-time. Finally, Bryant has scored 60 or more points 6 times, which is good for second all-time, while LeBron has only one such game. Also, Kobe Bryant had 3 seasons where he scored at least 10 40-point games. LeBron has had 0 such seasons scoring double-digit 40-point games. Finally, let's also take into account that Bryant had likely low-key the best scoring season in modern NBA history. In the 2005-2006 season, Bryant averaged 35.4 points per game while playing 80 of a possible 82 games. During that season, Bryant averaged 41.6 points for an entire month, scored 62 points in 3 quarters and benched himself for the entire 4th quarter, only to score 81 points in a game a month later. Bryant scored 50 or more points that season in 4 consecutive games, a feat only Wilt Chamberlain has accomplished otherwise. Looking at other prolific scoring seasons of the modern era, like Jordan's 37.1 per game in 86-87, or James Harden's 36.1 in 2018-19, the scoring per game league averages and pace of play were drastically higher than the NBA Kobe played in during that 2005-2006 season. Adjusting for pace, meaning taking the player's era in question, in this case Kobe's, and dividing the other era in question, in this case Jordan's and Harden's, you get the pace-adjusted opportunities Bryant would have had to apply and account for the additional possessions per game. And in this instance, in a more offensively prolific era, Kobe could have averaged close to 40 points for an entire season. And he did that with the likes of Smush Parker, Chris Mim, and Brian Cooks in his starting lineup. That team had zero spacing, people. So next time you hear someone say, "It isn't close," in reference to who is the better scorer between LeBron and Kobe, you can tell them, you're right, it isn't. Are you finding it difficult to make your way through all the fake news idiots constantly lying to you? Well, join me on a mission for truth, justice, and the American way. Until next time, Godspeed, truth seekers.